Dusk woke up, feeling completely disoriented. For a moment she thought it was morning, and she was waking up to her bed at home. So she was terrified to discover that she was sprawled out on the floor at Dayton's aunt's home. She remembered too that she was so lost in her head that she slipped down the stairs. On top of her head was throbbing, and she could see a bit of blood on the floor. She presumed she must have hit her head on the way down. Thankfully, the stairs led to the living room, to which it was carpeted. While she was counting her blessings that she hadn't fallen on the tile floor, her head and body were still aching profusely as she stood up. All of a sudden, she felt an icy chill go through her body. At first, she thought perhaps it was a result of her injuries, but this didn't feel like pain. It was an inexplainable feeling, like she never experienced before. It felt like something physically had gone through her. Dusk looked around in panic, wondering what could have caused her to have this feeling burst out of wind. She saw there were no windows near, and it wasn't cold now, so Dusk didn't understand why the source of the cold chill would have come from. Dusk felt extremely unsettled with this complete lack of explanation, but quickly the answer hit her as she got a frightening feeling that she wasn't by herself anymore in this house. "I'm not alone, am I?" Dusk stuttered. "No," a voice howled in response, causing Dusk's shoulders to clench up. She wondered for a moment if it was merely the sound of brisk winter wind, but the voice was too articulate for the wind to make that noise. She definitely heard a crisp in the end sound, followed by an O. The sound was clearly insulated, the way that it could have been, just hearing the howl of the winter wind. Besides, no windows anywhere near were open, so it was unlikely for her to hear those sounds as loud as clear as she may have merely been in the wind outside. "Was that just the wind?" Dusk finally blurted out. The wind didn't answer on cue like that again, so if she got another response, she would know for certain it was some sort of person or thing. Dusk waited and waited for a response, but heard nothing for several moments. Her nerves were beginning to settle. She began to think maybe she actually had just heard the wind and mistaken it for a voice. Perhaps it was just her imagination playing tricks on her. "You're not alone, Dusk," a voice responded, causing goosebumps to break out all over the blonde hex girl's body. Dusk couldn't believe her eyes. She saw a figure of a red-haired woman slowly appear in front of her. She didn't seem to be older than perhaps 25. The lady was extremely skinny and short. She wore a floral dress as a yellow bow on her hair. What frightened Dusk the most was that woman was so pale. She was almost transparent, and she had a faint hint of eerie glow around her. It too took Dusk several moments to overcome the paralyzing terror as she felt seeing the spirit and realized who it is. "Are you Ivy?" Dusk asked, remembering Dayton's story. "The girl who got lost?" "Yes, in a sense. I passed away long ago, and now only my ghost remains to watch over these grounds," Ivy nodded. "It seems we're kindred spirits." "What do you mean?" Dusk stuttered. "I felt your energy several times that you came here." "Your spirit is lost," Ivy said, her voice eerily soft and gentle. "I should know. I got lost once." "No, I'm not lost. I just hit my head," Dusk answered. "After a while, I realized that I wasn't lost anymore either. I wanted to escape and didn't want anybody in the world to know where I was," Ivy vaguely informed. "I sense the same energy within you. You're a restless spirit, and you want to escape." "I don't want to escape anything." Dusk shook her head in confusion. She had no idea what the spirit was talking about. "The thought of having your music career go nowhere, it frightens you," Ivy commented. "Yeah, but I'm not trying to run away from my band or anything," Dusk clarified. "The spirit seemed to have it all wrong." "Aren't you?" Ivy replied, her tone exquisite and philosophical. "Why have you spent so much time here? Why couldn't you have just gone home?" "To be more productive," Dusk answered. "It's nice to get away from your responsibilities and have to escape once in a while." Dusk caught it as the last phrase from her lips, the word escape. Thinking about it, she gravitated towards the coming here, so quite a bit after work recently. Something about the idea of sitting at home, not writing music, felt sad and lonely. Thorn and Luna would have done their own thing in the afternoon lately, and if Dusk returned home, she would have done the same thing. It almost felt like a complicity to remain at home and not work on music in the afternoons, like she always used to. She had the sinking feeling that her music career wasn't going anywhere lately, and coming here was a way of escaping the mundane nature of everyday life. Actually, I see what you mean. I have been using this place to escape from thinking on my own music, Dusk responded. Ivy was so mild-mannered and gentle that oddly Dusk felt that she could share some things the spirit would without the fear of being judged. I just feel like I've been a rut lately, and I don't know why or how to get out of coming here. I felt so peaceful and kind, like I could escape from those thoughts. I should be doing more music-wise. Those girls you've been spending time with don't seem very kind. Why do you give your time to them? Ivy replied. A gentle Aurora Ivy excluded, almost felt spooky to Dusk. Dusk had always imagined the house haunting spirits to Malviolent, having these spirits seek to her simply, as she was having a conversation with a friend, was eerie. It is good to be connected with songwriters my age, Dusk informed. Besides, Dawn and I have a lot in common. Do you? Ivy asked. Well, yeah, she's got problems with her parents and we're into the same kind of music. We both hope to become songwriters one day, Dusk listed. You two are very different worldviews, Ivy remarked. In recent days, that had definitely come out, but Dusk didn't quite understand what was relevant to anything. It wasn't an addictive of how good friends they would be. With my husband, we had a few things in common when we were married. I decided to run away. I didn't feel like he truly understood me or listened to me at all, Ivy informed. At first, Dusk wondered how it was relevant to anything, but perhaps that she was starting to feel like a grasp of how Ivy talked. Dusk got the odd sense that the spirit had come to help her, although she wasn't clear on why. Perhaps the comment was supposed to help her think through the aspect of friendship with Dawn. Dusk wasn't going to rebook the remark that Dawn didn't understand or listen, but upon giving a few moments of thought, she realized that she couldn't. Despite what they had in common, there was so much more the two of them had was very different. Like Dawn's philosophies about fame, Dawn's tendency to have a bit of a mean streak if provoked, and perhaps most prominently, as Dusk began to realize, what they vowed in a friend. When Dusk thought of her ideal friend, she wanted somebody to understood her beyond the surface level, and there were for her. Thinking back, Dawn immediately didn't act as if she was there for Dusk, although they both had crappy parents. Every time Dusk brought up how frustrated she was of her parents' treatment with her, Dawn didn't practically provide him much support. In fact, thinking about it, Dawn didn't seem to care much of Dusk's concerns. She just took it as an opportunity to complain about her own situation, without making Dusk feel heard or understood. Her mind shifted back to Thanksgiving when she told Dawn about what happened at the family gathering. She almost shrugged it off and didn't complain about her own family. Conversely, she had told Thorn and Luna. They immediately comfort her and try to help her process the situation. I see what you're trying to say, Dusk finally commented. I guess you're right. Dawn is too wrapped up in herself to provide moral support. Will you return here? Ivy asked. Her comment struck of curiosity rather than judgment, as if the spirit was generally curious if Dusk would ever see her again. Dusk would need to process more things more, but after tonight she was certain she did not want to be in the songwriting group anymore. The group had given her significantly more stress than support. They all made it clear that they were more interested about bragging about their writing than actually supporting one another. Fuck for a so-called support group. They literally just recited a few lines that they wrote each week, and nobody ever gave feedback on anything. Dusk couldn't remember the instance of any of them supporting one another. Even Dawn had asked Dusk for feedback the other day when they sat on the patio, which she had happily forgiven. When Dusk asked Dawn to read over her song in return, Dusk had felt dismissed. Dusk felt that she was being too sensitive, and she was every right to feel frustrated about this incredibly one-sided friendship. Dusk couldn't believe that she'd been so blind. "No," Dusk responded, pausing for a moment to make sure she meant her answer. "I won't. They made it very clear they don't care about me, so why should I care about them? For somebody who's known about not caring what others think of her, you sure do care a lot about what they think of you," Ivy stated. All of Ivy's other remarks had been sweet and helpful, but this was the first time Ivy's comments really bothered Dusk. However, she felt like washed over her a mind a bit more. Dusk had trouble bullying of the thought of Ivy's comment only bothered her what was true. She had devoted a huge amount of daily thoughts to these assholes in the past month, and for her life of her, she couldn't understand why. "Yeah, you're right," Dusk muttered, almost feeling defeated by this embarrassing realization. I wanted them to see that I'm a badass rocker chick that I introduced myself as when they first invited me to their group. For some reason, they just couldn't get through their thick skulls, realizing the music isn't pumping out songs every week. It took a lot of behind the scenes for our music video perfect. "Why does it matter what they think of you?" Ivy asked. Dusk was admittedly a bit lost for words, partially because she was beginning to feel unsteady on her feet from hitting her head, but also it was so deep that it would require more self-reflection than she was able to do at this very moment. "That's good food for thought," Dusk replied, wanting to make sure they acknowledged the spirit's question. "I hope you don't mind if I ask you a question, but why are you helping me?" "No one amongst the living has seen me in 2,200 years, Ivy stated. "I could sense that you were a fellow lost soul like me. I tried to escape once too. It only led me to becoming more lost. I know I can't solve all your problems, but I sense a kindred spirit in you. I want to help you find your way. It seems like I have done that." To Dusk's surprise, Ivy began to slowly fade away. Dusk began to panic a bit as their spirit's helping presence was almost too comforting for her in surreal time. Where she injured herself, she had met her wit's end. "Wait, I have so many questions," Dusk blurted out. "How did you find your way? How did you die?" "I was never able to find my way. You were lost too, but I sense that what I have told you tonight has given you some mental clarity. There is still hope for you, Dusk. Take what I have told you and use it for yourself back on the right path. Don't suffer the same fate I did," Ivy remarked. Her physical form had faded away. Dusk realized there was nothing she could do to make Ivy stay any longer, despite what she wanted more answers from this white spirit. "Thank you so much for your help, Ivy." Ivy had completely disappeared at this point, and admittedly, Dusk was so woozy from hitting her head that she felt like she was going to lose conscience again. The final thing she remembered before passing out was a little bit of Ivy's red hair disappearing as she waved goodbye to Dusk. Dusk woke up lying on the floor, feeling extremely disoriented. There was a bit of dry blood on her face, as well as a splotch on the carpet. Her head throbbed and her body ached as she slowly stood up and tried to find a reacquainted to herself and surroundings. She faintly remembered talking to somebody, but she couldn't for the life of her remember who could it possibly have been. Her head was so throbbing so hard that she almost wanted to sit down again. She also couldn't shake the feeling of something being that just happened before she passed out on it. She couldn't remember what it was. She remembered falling down the stairs, but it felt like there was something between her that she could be remembering. Dusk remembered that she was about to go home. She felt an awful interaction with Dawn and the rest of the group before this. That's right. That's what's caused her to trip. She was lost in her thoughts as she hadn't been looking where she was going and fell down the stairs. Still, it frustrated her because there was something between that she wasn't remembering, something important. Dusk knew that she was in no state to drive home. As strange as it was, she needed to stay the night there. She hoped that Dayton's aunt wouldn't mind her sleeping in the bed, but her head hurt so much that she felt like she wouldn't be able to sit up for that long. Besides, she was so disoriented that there was no way she would drive home safely that night. She slowly sauntered up the stairs and headed for the bedroom. She tried to turn her brain back to thinking about that meeting earlier that night. just to get it off of her mind. How much her head was killing her. That's when it hit her. Ivy. She'd seen the ghost haunting the place. First time regained consciousness. It came streaming back to her now. All the advice Ivy gave her was the realization she was trying to escape from her fears about her music career. The fact that Dawn had actually had a really shitty friend who didn't listen to her. Wait, that had happened though? Dusk had just awakened from passing out when she saw Ivy, and she apparently passed out right after. After seeing Ivy's ghost just a dream? Dusk didn't suppose it matter now. She needed to lie herself down to recover from hitting her head. She knew Fawn and Luna would be extremely worried, but Dusk couldn't allow herself to think about that right now. There was literally no way for her to be steady enough on her feet or have the energy to drive home now. Besides, she would be able to explain everything to them tomorrow. Dusk slowly fumbled towards the bedroom, her legs aching as well from tumbling down the stairs. Upon entering the bedroom, the first thing Dusk saw was the full moon from the window, looming large in the sky. Dusk looked contemplatively at the moon for a moment, wondering if this had ever happened. She basked in the moonlight for a brief second, thinking about how obscurely the surreal things the night had been. Not feeling that she could stand on her feet any longer without the risk of passing out, Dusk crawled underneath the purple and pink quilt on the bed and fell asleep as soon as her head hit the pillow. Dusk could feel her eyelids begin to open, a bit slowly due to extreme grogginess and disoriented. After basking in the few more moments of rest, Dusk fully opened her eyes. She felt a burst of panic at first, wondering where the hell she was why she wasn't in her bed. A sting on top of her head promptly reminded her of where she was. She never left Dayton's aunt's house. She'd fallen down the stairs and hit her head, and the bump was throbbing too much for her to safely drive home. As Dusk got to her feet, the top of her head was sore and sensitive, but it wasn't debilitating like it had been the last night. Her mind quickly turned to the spirit of Ivy. The things Ivy had said that night had been extremely impactful to Dusk. So many things and spirit had clicked on her for her. Dusk definitely felt lost, but she didn't doubt for a moment that Ivy was correct about how things been in escapes and hanging out with Dawn all the time. And coming here had distracted her from all the thinking of her music career, which she was afraid wouldn't go anywhere. Going out all places in the middle of the woods sure made Dusk felt a sense of peace. It was something that she didn't have to think about all the responsibilities she had, and the fact that she felt was incapable of being creative in the stupid rut that she's been in. For all the wisdom the spirit had provided her, one thing Ivy had said troubled her. That question, why does it matter what they think of you, had been so put simply that Dusk felt the answer should be obvious to her, but it wasn't. Why the hell did she care so much of what they thought of her? Dusk shook the thought from her mind as she remembered Fawn and Luna were probably worried sick by now, and she didn't know why her dumbass didn't even thought of it before, but Dayton's aunt had a phone. She just called the apartment and let them know where she was. Although she was capable of leaving at this point, Dusk wanted to stay here just a little while longer. She wanted the space to process through the spirit's question on down a bit more, and here it seemed like a perfect place to do it. Besides, with Dusk no longer being a part of these meetings, this would feel like last time here. She appreciated this place to be savor a little. Dusk walked down the stairs and more carefully than last night, headed towards the phone. It was a black phone attached to the side wall at the edge of the kitchen, with the number buttons fixated to the wall. The phone began ringing after she dialed Fawn's number. Hello? Fawn stuttered. Dusk presumed it was an awkward reaction, because she had no idea who this number belonged to. She was also likely shaken up from Dusk's disappearance. Hey, Fawn, it's me, Dusk. Dusk answered. Oh my god, Dusk! Fawn exclaimed. Where are you? I'm at Dayton's aunt's house. I'm really sorry for scaring you. I hit my head last night and fell asleep. I just woke up, Dusk informed. Are you coming home? Fawn asked. Not yet. I just need a little longer to think on my own, Dusk admitted. I promise I'll explain everything when I get back in a few hours. I'll see you soon. Bye. With that, Dusk hung up the phone. Her mind turned to how sweet and kind it was that Thorn seemed worried. Dawn probably wouldn't have cared if she was gone for months. The spirit's question had been nagging at Dusk's mind. Why did she care about what those people had fought? The answer to the question seemed elusive to Dusk. She paced around the living room, trying to come up with a logical explanation. She could tell it was really going to be a way on her physiological level if she couldn't think of an answer. Ivy was absolutely right. Dusk was known for not giving a fuck about what others thought of her. As embarrassing as it was to Dusk, she remembered some of the thoughts that she had about wanting to please the group and leave a good impression of them. Why was she bending over backwards to impress these people, even when they were very obvious that she didn't give a crap about her? Dusk decided to step outside of the patio and get some fresh air. Perhaps a little walk in the woods would clear her mind soon after, to answer this question that was nagging at her. Dusk grabbed her shoes from over by the front door and headed back towards the patio area. She was for sure to leave the screen door open a crack, as she had no key, and thus she didn't want to lock the house until she was leaving. The blonde Hex girl had forgotten about getting the storm last night, and she was so surprised about a couple inches of snow on the ground. The temperature felt so mild and manageable, which surprised Dusk quite a bit, considering that she was only wearing a t-shirt. She admired the trees with their own snow-covered branches for a moment, before dwelling back to the depths of her mind. Although she had briefly escaped what she had learned from the spirit, letting those thoughts wash over her, and that's when it hit her. One realization Dusk had gotten from the spirit's words, that Dusk wanted the songwriters group to see her as a badass member of a popular band. Although she did try not to think about it recently, Dusk felt that she was still mourning silently from having her cross-country tour end. The fact that it happened without warning had been really impactful and traumatic to Dusk. She could feel the pain inside when she motioned the idea of touring, not having just the crowd scream your name. She had that once, and it had been taken away from her. Although Dusk hated herself for it, she had to admit that somebody else wasn't thinking about famous felt good. She felt like introduced to a songwriters group when Dawn invited her to give her songwriting tips, and Dusk remembered how the invitation felt like somebody at the same time felt like nobody. It all made sense now. Her stupid brain latched onto the idea that the songwriters group thought of her as a member of the famous band. She had painted an image whose people were and who they thought she was. In her head, despite neither the large image was true, she had thought of Dawn as a badass, edgy friend who was into the same music and the same parental issues. But in reality, she wasn't the person Dusk had in her head at all. She was selfish, vain brat, and Dusk was far better off than a friend like her in her life. The realization admittedly hit Dusk pretty hard, but it was so cathartic to have finally clarity of her mind. She was extremely grateful for the spirit's questioning. Despite that Ivy hadn't really done that much, Dusk found it incredibly helpful to simply ask the same questions that she never thought to. At first, Dusk's mind turned into a panic, as she wanted to depart from this last time visiting this place better, not in mental shambles, but she figured out why she cared. But the reasoning was far more frightening than she expected. She turned off her mind for a moment, just admiring the beautiful trees in the woods and how pretty the white fluff ascended from each of the branches. She could see a cardinal flying to one of them for another, and another snowbird pecking the ground. Dusk felt her mind calm down. Her thoughts then turned to the music video. The video had been free of collective efforts, and already had been a success than ever Dusk ever expected it would be, even without knowing the chart position. Moreover, while Dusk didn't felt like too much taking credit for the video, she had not pushed the band to do better. They may have just put the original version of the video, that basically a repeat of their first video. Despite how hard she was on herself, she realized that perhaps she had been braver and more creative than she ever felt. It was hard to remember, without how anxious she was, but perhaps the rut wasn't stupidity or lack of creativity. As Dusk processed it more, she realized that it was her anxiety more than anything. She was hurt by the tour suddenly ending and afraid that she would never achieve that level of fame again. Dusk was starting to feel the sense that it was probably unrealistic to think that she'd given all of her problems solved at the same time she left there. But perhaps that she didn't need to. She now was armed with all this information about her complex feelings, and enough to not be hanging out with the cult of the narcissism otherwise known as the songwriting group. Now with that she was anxious, the first step she was going to be attempted to be kinder and more patient with herself. Even though the future was uncertain, it would be hard, but Dusk would at least felt better, more like herself again, than having realized all this. Moreover, the whole ordeal had given her her newfound of appreciation for what incredible friends that she had in Thorn and Luna. They were amazing friends, roommates, and bandmates. Dusk honestly felt that kind of bad for ignoring them so much. Although it wasn't the perfect magical ending Dusk had expected, she felt her heart was ready to leave this place. She had grown extremely fondness of the beauty of the little house over the past few weeks, but she would never be able to come back here now, knowing that she was cutting ties with the songwriters group. Although it would be a loss that Dusk would so surely mourn, she was kind of okay of the idea of not returning here. In a lot of different ways, this place represented escape of reality to her. Now she fully understood her feelings. She didn't need to run from them anymore. She glanced back up at the trees and began circling back to the house. She had admired the simplicity of the nature that was surrounded with, and she simply let herself bask in the peaceful energy of this place one last time. After a brief walk, Dusk arrived back at the house and walked back to the screen door, so she would have a total closure of this place. She took one last careful walk around the house. She glanced at the kitchen with its marble countertop and wooded panel walls, living room with its cabin vibe and comfortable couches, upstairs office with the rocker office chair and the songwriter group sat in them a number of times. Finally, the bedroom, which Dusk quickly tidied up so Dayton's hopefully won't notice anyone who slept here when she returned. "Thanks, Ivy," Dusk whispered, as she headed back for the front door. Another minor realization hit Dusk, that she internally pondered whether or not she encounter with Ivy was real or a fragment of her imagination conjured up as she blacked out, hitting her head. Although it didn't really surprise her, Dusk felt that she finally understood Thorn and Luna were saying about the tour had happened, simply because they've all experienced it, even if nobody else had. Maybe it didn't really matter whether or not to the encounter with Ivy had been paranormal, real encounter, or merely a delusion. The encounter with Ivy's spirit was a firm kick in the ass Dusk needed to get out of this rut that she was in. It didn't matter whatever had happened or not, just because she literally stood and no one besides Dusk would ever know about it. The only important thing was the impact of the experience it had on her, and how much it changed her approach in her life. As Dusk walked out of being in the front door, being sure to lock the knob from the inside as she left, she smiled faintly and felt confident that she had spent her much time needed in this place, but now it was time to move on. Dusk was so ready to be home after this whole ordeal. Despite it only being 24 hours, it felt like an eternity since she'd last been in her apartment. She mentally prepared herself to be bombarded with millions of questions from Luna and Thorn as she opened the door. "Oh my gosh, you're okay!" Luna exclaimed as she ran over to give Dusk a huge hug. "Yeah, I'm alright. It's good to be home," Dusk smiled as she hugged her redhead friend tightly. "What happened?" Thorn asked. She too rushed over to give the blonde a warm embrace. "I accidentally fell down the stairs and hit my head last night. I was so dizzy from the fall to drive home," Dusk informed. "I'm okay now, other than the stupid bump on my head." "I'm so glad you're alright," Luna breathed a sigh of relief. "You must have been really nauseous this morning when you called." "No, I just needed some time to think about some stuff." Dusk took a deep breath, preparing to reveal the thing that she's been feeling the past few weeks. "I've been wanted to say that I'm sorry for spending too much time with Dawn with these past few weeks, and disregarding your feelings about the music video and how you felt about the songwriting group. That was really stupid of me. I've just been really struggling with this whole tour and fame weren't real thing. more than I thought. Honestly, I kind of thought so, Thorn replied. Really? Dusk was surprised as she caught on. Yeah, I don't mean to put you in a vulnerable position or anything, but you seem to kind of been in like your shell of yourself lately, Luna answered. You haven't been that spunky badass we all love, Thorn chimed in. You didn't offend me at all, Dusk assured. It actually felt kind of cathartic to have Luna confirm that she was really been thinking. I've come to the realization earlier today. I kind of figured that this might we talked about after your call this morning. I hope you don't mind. I invited Gus over to talk things out with us, Thorn informed. To Dusk's surprise, she almost immediately heard Gus's voice as he walked out of the hallway of the apartment. This wasn't intended to be a dramatic reveal. I just had to use the bathroom right before you came in, Gus greeted with a chuckle. Thorn gave me a call this morning saying you've been struggling with some related things related to your music career. So I thought I'd pop over and help you with the process, given that I had the time. To be fair, I sort of noticed you seem to be struggling a bit lately, practically with all the questions about your friend. That's so sweet of you, Dusk smiled. You're not wrong. I've been struggling a bit recently too, and to be honest, I just want to hang out with the songwriters group because I thought it makes me feel like somebody now. Even with the tour stuff didn't happen, we still had a pretty song with the decent on the radio. Now with that they invited us to give them tips, I thought they look up to me as a mentor. But I realized last night, that's not how all they saw me. I assume your remark means that you don't feel like somebody, Gus informed. Dusk was surprised. She felt the faintest hint of tear forming up in her eye. It was very hard for her to even say the word she wanted to, but in her heart she could felt it was true. Yeah. She felt more stupid than ever as tears began to swell up. She began to continue of how she could through her emotional outburst. I haven't been all that stuff with the witches happened since we lost our fame, and I think I'm getting out of it now, but I just don't know if I can shake this nagging little feeling that we're in the rut right now. We recorded the album and released it to the world in a week, but it took us over a damn month just to film the music video. I feel like that songwriting group is getting your head, Luna rebuked. Like we kept saying, you don't have to pump out every content every week like an artist they think they do. Especially if not the content you're making in this stuff, like that abysmal Tucket rap. Yeah, I mean, it took us a lot longer to do that video than some of the other stuff we've done pre-tour, and it was because we took a while to find the accurately captured what we wanted for the song, Thorn answered. Dusk kind of had a point that they were working on other stuff, but honestly it felt like starting out again, after the pace of emotionally exhausting tour that was, Luna remarked. Yeah, I did too, Thorn agreed. Didn't you like it, Dusk? It felt like there was more of a void, like we should be more productive than we were to be honest, Dusk admitted. If I may share the observation, Gus jumped in. Something I have noticed about you over the last few months. I've known that you seem to want different things out for releasing music. Thorn and Luna's favorite part seemed to be the pursuit of creativity. Given within the songwriting group coming up with a project, while you seem to like this as well, Dusk, it seems like the most important part to you is how perspective is by others. Is my assumption correct? Dusk pondered on what Gus had said for a moment. Her tears started to abate a little. Honestly, yeah, I wanted to move on from that. Although I have seen what it did to my old friend Dawn, I could completely sell myself out for fame, dress up in some skimpy outfit and sing about how I want some boy to come and love me all right and night. But it wouldn't mean any shit to me. I'm really proud of you for realizing that, Dusk, Gus smiled. Although it seems simple, but a very mature realization to have. We've got a lot of confidence in you, Dusk, Thorn complimented. Just because you aren't pumping songs like that group does, doesn't mean you're creative or motivated. Thanks, Dusk faintly smiled. It means a lot. It's really hard to admit, but since we got back from the tour, I haven't really had that much confidence in myself. Is that because you felt like you're losing your fame equates as failure? Gus asked. Gus's remark immediately hit Dusk even harder than she expected to, only because it ran out so true to the feeling. She hadn't realized it, but what Gus said was spot on. Honestly, yeah, Dusk replied. Her eyes became teary again. When we were on tour, I got caught up in fame, and I think a lot of confidence in myself came from some people, thinking we're famous and loving our music. We've been all that went away. I guess it began to felt like we were falling snow somehow, because it was taking so long for a second single to be successful. It hasn't been that long. It's only been a month since our first album took fully 2 years to fully write, Luna joked. Did you really think we were going to achieve the instant fame again? No, Dusk said, thinking about what the redhead said for a moment. I guess I was just worried we'd fail, or we never achieve that level of fame that we had before. While your feelings are valid, Dusk, I hope you don't mind if I ask you. What's the worst that could happen if you don't achieve that level of fame again? Gus asked. I mean, Dusk pondered for a moment, I'd keep working at Jack's, I'd still be making music. I love with my friends. I'd probably be able to figure out another job eventually if nothing changed. But yeah, I guess it's not as bad as I worked it up to be in my head. I just felt like we didn't become famous again. It would meant we failed as a band. Putting in all perspective though, I'd rather be making music. I love selling out for fame. It's not just worth it. That's how I've always thought of our music, Ford replied. Although the idea would be cool if we're famous, but I remember us all writing songs for those 2 years before we found Gus. We had been so much fun together, regardless of what a lot of people knew about what our music is or not. You're right, Dusk realized. Writing those songs together in high school was wicked fun. So much fun trying to fit in with those assholes in the songwriting group. Does this mean you're done going to those meetings? Thorn asked. Oh god, yeah. I wouldn't go back there even if you paid me, Dusk promised. I am sure you're happy about that. I could tell that you never liked them. I mean, hell, you even told Julia about our music video, but you were dead set against me telling Dawn anything. Thorn lightly chuckled at the response. Well, a part of it did make sense, since it was Julia's protest and she saw us filming. You're not wrong about trusting Julia more than Dawn. I just always get the weird vibe off of her. She looked like she couldn't be trusted. Just something about the way she was acting. Especially recently when she thought that she was better than anyone. Dusk hung her head a bit, although not being from associated with this person, but she was slowly realizing it pretty shitty. As much as it pained her, Dusk immediately recalled how she had been self-important on fame on tour. You mean like me when I let that fame get to my head on the tour? Oh no, Dusk, you're nowhere near being like the way Dawn is, Thorn assured. I acted like I was more important than just some of my fans. Just because we're famous. Dusk immediately felt the self-deprecation begin to creep in. It isn't the same thing as Dawn does? I mean, yeah, it isn't good that you let the fame get to your head, Thorn observed. There is a difference between acting superior and making others feel bad about themselves in the process. And Dawn does both. You only acted superior briefly, and you learned from that mistake. Dawn still has a lot of learning to do. Yeah, Dusk's mood began to gradually improve, as Thorn's comment washed about her mind for a moment. The black-haired hex girl was absolutely right. Everybody made mistakes at times, and Dusk never once intended to hurt anybody during that brief moment that she got over-eager about their newfound fame. She just got a bit too wrapped up that she didn't even matter, not dismiss her and the empathy that she had earlier. Thanks for helping me feel better. I think I've realized I was trying way too hard to try and please people, that songwriters group, getting nothing in return. So you have nothing to worry about me going back there. I'm done with those meetings and those people. I'm really proud of you, Dusk, Luna smiled. The way I think about that is we're never going to please anybody. So why waste our days worrying about what everybody might think? It's much easier said than done. But it's a philosophy I always try to live by and by. Yeah, I got so caught up on the mean of being famous again that I was beginning to run my confidence to the ground, Dusk nodded. Thank you guys for processing this with me. I've already done so much at Dayton Zon's place, but this helped me think right through everything even deeper. I'm done feeling sorry for myself for like some pathetic loser. Making music is what I like is meaningful to me. Even if people don't like our music, well, fuck them. In my years of the music industry, I have come to believe that one of the most essential pieces of advice to take you to heart as an artist. Gus informed. At the end of the day, as well as trying to make music video connects with the general public, you cannot let yourself become so consumed in fame that you lose your own artistic identity. If it's not meaningful to you in some way, then what's the point? At least it's my humble opinion. That's a really good advice, Gus, Luna remarked. I don't think I ever want to be in the music industry, even if I couldn't create music with the expression of myself in some way. I could never do what Dawn's doing, Thorne replied. For some people completely loose who are in that pursuit of fame, while there is some shameful about being famous, when an artist loses themselves, they usually lose their passion shortly after, Gus informed. I'm not going to let that happen to me, Dusk replied. I know I'm not saying this though, but I'm really lucky to have you guys as friends and bandmates. We're all lucky to have Gus as an amazing manager.